We are live.
Namaste, friends, and welcome to Mahabharata Myths. Now, this is a series where we talk about various myths and misconceptions related to the greatest epic in the world. The unfortunate reality is that there are so many stories about the Mahabharata which people consider to be true, but in reality, they are myths. They are misconceptions which people believe to be true. So, we felt that there is a need to put out this series wherein we try and talk about all these myths and present the actual facts, the real facts based on authentic sources. So, welcome to this series on Mahabharata myths. My name is Deepak, and with me is my fellow author and Mahabharata enthusiast Pranshu Saxena. So, together we are going to take you through 18 different myths associated with the greatest epic of the world. Now, in this series, we already finished the first episode wherein we had three myths. So, before we start off, we'll just have a quick look at these three myths. So, there were three myths which we discussed in the previous session. The first one was that Duryodhana was the rightful heir to the Hastinapura throne, and the second and third were related to Karna. Now, when we talk of Duryodhana's right to the throne, so we see there that there is a quotation, there is an excerpt from the critical edition of the Mahabharata, wherein Dhritarashtra himself says that you are not the son of a king, and according to the line of the succession, the throne belongs to someone else. So this is a very interesting aspect. In fact, in the previous episode, Pranshu gave a wonderful exposition about the lineage of the Kuru clan, starting from Pururava and then going on to Yayati, going on to Bharata and Pratipa and Shantanu. So basically, the point was there was no rule that the eldest son should be the heir. So in this case, Duryodhana's father himself was not the heir to the Hastinapura throne. It belonged to Pandu and Pandu's son. So Duryodhana definitely could not be considered as the rightful heir to the Hastinapura throne. Now the second myth was related to Karna being rejected by Drona because he was a low caste. So now was Karna a low caste? He was a Suta, and Sutas had mixed parentage. So they were born of a Kshatriya and a Brahmana, and they were definitely not considered low caste. In fact, Karna's father was one of the nobles in Anga, and his uncle was the king of Anga. So when Karna took over as the king, it was not actually a great achievement, it was just an elevation of rank. So in this myth, we can see here, it says that Drona knew about Karna's wickedness. That is the reason he refused to give the Brahmastra to Karna. And the last myth which we dealt with was Karna being rejected by Draupadi because he was a low caste. So you can see here there is an excerpt from the critical edition of the Mahabharata, wherein it clearly says that Kshatriyas like Karna and Shalya. So Karna is being named as a Kshatriya here, so not as a Suta. So it says he could not string the bow. So where is the question of Draupadi rejecting? Because he failed to string the bow. So these are the three myths which we dealt with in the previous session. So now we start off with today's episode, and we go to the first myth. Arjuna abducted Subhadra without her permission. So I would request Pranshu to take from here.
Right. So basically, there's this story that Arjun basically abducted Subhadra without her permission or even her knowledge. Now there are several aspects to it. Subhadra is actually not a minor character. She's a major character in the epic. She is literally the mother and the guide to the next generation. After the war is over, she's the one who guided Parikshit and his kingly duties as the dharma is reestablished. So she is literally the legacy protector of Krishna and the dharma itself. And her marriage therefore has significance. We already have Draupadi being won by skill. Arjun, with his skill of shooting those 5 arrows at the Matsya Yantra, demonstrated his skill as a Kshatriya. The other is basically the valor. So Subhadra marriage is part of the display of valor of a Kshatriya. a skill of a Kshatriya, a valor of the Kshatriya itself. And Vyas emphasizes that, as you know, we would show in the quotes also, that
Yes.
he could have gone the every other way. Like Pandu went to get Madri, he paid for Madri. What is
Yes.
about buying a wife, right? So Arjuna did not want to go that route. He could have asked for the hand itself. He could have gone to Vasudev and Balram. They knew, I mean, he was a nephew of Vasudev, right? They were relatives. So he could have asked for the hand also, and they would not have said no to him. But he wanted to demonstrate. He wanted Vyas himself, basically through Vaishampayan, is telling us that he wanted to demonstrate the level by which he's basically the other way is basically, the girl herself comes and asks. And in
Yes.
this scenario, in a way, there was that situation. Krishna himself basically requested Arjun
Yes.
to kidnap Subhadra. And when
Yes.
Subhadra does kidnap, Subhadra is kidnapped, she's the one driving the chariot away.
Yeah,
And
just before that, I would like to share this
yeah,
picture. This is a very famous painting by Raja Ravi Verma. It is
exactly.
titled Arjuna and Subhadra. So this is based on the southern edition of the Mahabharata, where Arjuna goes as a sannyasi and he stays in Dwarka and in Prabhasa, and he woos Subhadra. So that is a interesting story from the southern edition, and this dispels the story that Subhadra was not interested and Arjuna forcefully abducted her.
Right. And the other part, which is basically a part of this misconception, is that Subhadra was promised by Balram to Kauravas, like Duryodhan. That
Yes,
is that is a later rendition of it, because you see, if you go say in Malaysian, for example,
yes,
she was promised to Dushasan.
huh.
In Vayang, she was promised to somebody else, another Kaurava. So the idea is that yes, there would be plans to get her married off, but the girl's permission herself counts. And this is actually again and again emphasized by both Krishan and Sharan, the brother Krishan sends to, look after Arjun. They both basically emphasize Subhadra basically likes you as such. And Subhadra is the one who's driving the chariot away. And this is again, a very, we could make a joke. It's a family tradition for that family, right? Everybody drives Arjun's chariots, first the
Chariots.
sister, now then the brother. But this is again the idea. She's the legacy keeper of the
Yeah,
future.
that's just come up on
She's
the
the one
screen.
who, yeah.
Subhadra riding the chariot.
Right, exactly. And she's a legacy. See, and this is where the higher Uparicharya thought is that she is the legacy creator. She's the
Yes,
first who drives the chariot. Krishna does later in the Kurukshetra. So here Vyas is again giving us like a little bit of a, you know, I this is all is part of the big plan, and
yeah,
this is
a preview.
exactly
And the except from the Adi Parva, from the Harana Harika Parva, so wherein Krishna is trying to console Balrama and explain to him the reality. So he says, Kunti's son, that is Arjuna, saw the blemishes in the other methods. So I think this is a very interesting thing, because prior to that, the sentence says, "Who can contemplate the giving away of a daughter as if she were an animal? Which
exactly.
man on earth would like to sell his daughter?" I think maybe you would like to just comment on this.
And that's basically the other ways basically by which people used to acquire bride. Kanyadan,
Yeah.
by paying for the bride, that is
Yes.
called the yatuk, or shulk. But here Arjun decided to go for virya shulk to show his prowess
Yes.
and basically get her by the dint of his prowess itself. And uh, and and that's basically what happens. And again, Yadavas are not very unhappy about this also. They were one of the biggest allies even after. So it was sort of a fixed match, you would say,
Yes.
which Krishna did.
Yes.
So basically, match fixing is also as old as Mahabharata. But another point here is that Subhadra is also Yogamaya. She is the embodiment of Yogamaya in the Purans and the other texts. And the big the huge Jagannath chariots, right? The second chariot. See,
Yes.
the Jagannath is the statues of Balram and Krishna and Subhadra, and the
Subhadra.
It is Arjun's chariot because it's Subhadra driving Arjun away. So every year we celebrate Subhadra driving Arjun away as they basically start their married life.
So basically, the summary is that Arjuna abducting Subhadra without her consent is a myth. It's definitely not a reality. So moving on to the next myth. Now, this is a very important one, and unfortunately, this is something which many people believe to be true, thanks to what was depicted on various
We are
TV
to
shows.
yeah.
Ande ka putra anda. So, according to this story, when Duryodhana fell in the Hall of Illusions, Draupadi laughed at him and said, Andeka Putra Anda. And that is projected as being the inciting incident for the entire remaining course of events. So, in fact, the entire blame has been put on Draupadi that she is the one who is responsible for this all.
So let me yeah, so I'll sorry. So let me give you a brief about it, that where this event took place and how it happened.
Yeah,
So
the entire chronology.
yes, exactly. So
Yeah,
Pandavas basically sent out the armies. They first defeated Jarasandh. They won
yes.
the right to contest to create a Rajsuya Yagya. They sent out the armies in all the four directions. The armies went in four directions, conquered all of the wherever they can go, till actually they cannot go any further. They literally reached the doors of heaven in Uttar Harivarsh, where Arjun was given tribute even from there. The eight parrot-colored horses he gets.
Northern Kuru.
Yeah, northern Kurus.
Yeah,
Uttar Harivarsh, yeah. So in one text it's Uttar Harivarsh, in other text it's Uttar Kuru.
yeah.
So then basically when they come back, they organize this Asu Yagya. The entire family participates. 5 fires were lit. There was like Somdat sitting on one fire. Jadrat, being the son-in-law, was sitting on the fire as 5 Yajmans. They were basically doing the continuous havi into the fire itself. So a whole family was given tasks. Karn was given the task of distributing gifts to whoever comes. For example, Dushasan I think, was looking after the food preparation, and which is again a dichotomy because Bhim and Dushasan in the kitchen together, right,
Yeah.
has a little bit of a morbid ending at the end of it. But
Yeah.
and during that process, from the beginning, as we talked about in the first epic, also first episode
Yeah.
of this on this misconceptions, Duryodhan was trained as a treasurer in a normal
Yes.
course events without the outside events butting in or his own misambitions literally firing. um, he would have been the treasurer to Yudhishthir all his life, and here also
Yes.
he takes the same role. He was a treasurer at Rasuya Yagya, responsible for getting all the collecting all the riches which were being showered on the Pandavas. So he literally had the whole list of exactly what everything is there. So somebody said, "Where is Uttar Kuru?" So Uttar Kuru would be somewhere near the. So there are these. So basically, we have three huge oceans. I'll just digress a little and answer about that Uttar Kuru. So there are three huge oceans we have. Obviously, the Arab Sagar to our west, the Bay of Bengal to our east, and of course the Indian Ocean to our south. So the Northern Ocean is it can have many meanings here. There's actually the steppes, which is basically an ocean of grass. Also, in that steppes, there are two huge lakes. So Baikal is one of those lakes. Baikal may be maybe the fourth ocean, or someone which is closer to us, maybe even Caspian Sea. So Uttar Kuru is probably somewhere in the region, because we have, when Arjuna is doing this for northern expedition, he's in the valley of Shalodaya River. Shalodaya is basically the river in what is modern Xinjiang. So basically, Uttar Kuru is a region around around those great lakes up there. So so that is where basically the limit of the geography at that point in time ended. Uh, Also, you have to imagine the 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 how you support an army in the field. The army cannot actually go past its supply lines, and so there is always a limit to which they would go east, west, south, and north, depending upon their supply lines. Because as such, we know that the Earth is actually much bigger and they can continue on and on till kingdom come home. But they do not try to do that. They try to do the impossible while staying within the limits of what is humanly possible. And that is again a lesson which basically Vyas again tells us. They could have won the war in 2 seconds. Arjuna would have taken out his weapons, divine weapons he was given, shot them, and that's it. No story, nothing. Nobody talking about Bhisham Pratigya and Krishna running with the Daddu, 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 and I have to take the wheel out and try to, everybody's crying Daddu, Daddu, and I have to take my wheel out to show them. So all nothing would have done, nothing Ashwathama Mara Gaya, nothing would have needed. But you see, then there's no story, there's no message, there's nothing which basically excites the human soul in us as we are basically looking at as we are reading this epic. There's nothing to keep us engrossed, and that is where the power of Vyas comes in. He creates these divine situations with human elements in it, which keeps us engaged continuously in it. So again, going back to it, so once the Rajsu Yag is over, Duryodhana actually took more than a 2 week vacation. He's there for more than 2-3 weeks. He's almost there a month, staying around that palace of illusions and everything. During that 1 month, he had this series of humiliations. He saw that there is water on the floor, and he tried to
Yes.
his clothes. It turned out there was no water; it was just crystal. Another place he
Yes.
thought it was like normal floor, and he fell into the pool. Everybody laughed. Bhim was there. Bhim would laugh at Bhim and Duryodhan has that thing from the childhood, right? And they would
So it's
laugh.
natural that he would laugh.
Yeah, and it's not the first time Duryodhan would be hearing that laughter also.
That's right.
He has been hearing it for quite a long time, right? And and at the same time, Yudhishthir was very, very nice. He gave him clothes. Nakul and Sahadev helped him out. Krishna laughed, maybe Arjun may have laughed. It's not very clear. It's just that Bhim laughed, and there was no Draupadi in that sequence. Draupadi is not even
That's right.
present. But now, where we come to it, Duryodhan has seen the riches Pandavas have, and
Yes.
this and if somebody is getting insulted, right, they would just literally leave the place. He stayed there for like a month almost, and then he left. And then after few more days of that, he basically comes up with a plan. He goes and tells it to Dhritarashtra. Oh, what did I see in this? And he just describes all the riches which were given. They are not part of the Rajsuya Parv itself, the Rajsuya Arambha Parv. These are the part of the Dyut Parv, where he's telling ki they got all these riches from this people and that people, and there's so much riches and everything. And that's where he lies. He says that, oh, I fell down in water there and, Draupadi laughed. So
Yes.
he is lying there. He is trying to incite his father, and that is where he knows he can push that button. Because Dhritarashtra, for all he knows, he also knows that legend, right? The Draupadi was born for the end of the Kauravas, right?
That's right.
So if she was his daughter-in-law, then Dhritarashtra would have been a little bit. That's why he sent them to that to the to the Swayamvar. They wanted
Yeah.
her to become a daughter-in-law. So then she has to protect the house she is part of, right?
That's right.
And that's where Duryodhan pushes the right button. He knows how to basically get his father to act unjustly, like how he can manipulate his father, and that's basically it. There was no such thing about Draupadi laughing at him, or he even actually feeling bad about it. But this is just a myth they have kept on propagating, because this is a part of the. This is a. I would say this is a part of the. They blame Helen for the
Troy.
for the Trojan War.
Troy War.
They
Yeah.
blame
Trojan.
Sita for the abduction, and they blame the girl for she's not wearing correct clothes or everything. This is a part
That's
of
right.
thing which is part of our society even now, something which needs to correct. And this Vyas is telling from that time onwards, please correct this method. But we continue to fall into the trap of blaming the female for the follies of men, literally.
So, in fact, I think we can say that Duryodhana lying to Dhritarashtra was the actual inciting incident, and not Draupadi laughing because she was never there.
Right. Actually, as I was thinking, I was reading up the Malaysian version, which is not the official version at all, but in
Yeah.
which he lies to Dhritarashtra about Bhim bullying him.
Huh.
So decides to poison Bhim. See, that's the thing. He continues. So this pattern is recognized not only in our. It is pattern is recognized by not only by Vyas but later on by other retellers across the ocean also, that they realize
That's
this
right.
fellow knows how to manipulate his father. And this has been a pattern across in the critical edition also. Kern says Indra was the one who tried to became
He,
the leech and got into my thigh to
yeah.
incite Ram against me. So this is a habit of the people who try to justify their bad deeds by creating these false events around them, and that's why this myth is getting perpetuated.
So, whatever you have discussed just now, that's been summarized in this screen. So, this is from the critical edition from the Sabha Parva, from the Dyuta Parva. So, the first part is the actual incident which occurred, which shows Duryodhana falling into the lake. And then it clearly shows Bhimasena, Arjuna, and the twins all burst out in laughter. So, they were the ones who were there. Then the second part of the screen is where Duryodhana goes and gives this report to Dhritarashtra, and that is where he lies. So he says that Krishna and Partha laughed out loudly at me. So Krishna was, of course, not there, and then he puts the blame on Draupadi. He says that it was Draupadi and the other women, when in reality none of them were there. So
Exactly.
probably this was the inciting incident because of which Dhritarashtra agreed to organize the uh, Dyuta, and then of course we know what all happened after that.
Exactly, and he does that again also for the Dyut Parv, for the Ghosh Yatra.
Yes,
Persuades Dhritarashtra again telling lies. So
yes,
he knows how to manipulate his father.
manipulate his
And
father, and that was probably the reason why all this happened, because he was manipulatable. He
yeah,
was easily manipulatable because he had a blind love for his son.
exactly, and that's why they call him Pragya Chakshu. That basically he should be what looking through the eyes of knowledge. Pragya, he should
Yeah,
be looking through the eyes of knowledge, but he never uses them. He never,
yes,
yeah, so he basically never speaks out. Only once he did speak out when the war came. That's when he says, "You're not a son of a father."
yeah,
It was just
but it
too
was
late.
too late. It
It
was
was
too
too
late
late.
because at that point Duryodhana was beyond control.
Exactly. You basically spoil the you basically and spare the rod and spoil the child. But the from the start itself, Vidur basically advised him that don't raise him as a prince. You raise him as a son elsewhere.
Yes,
Don't give him that position.
yes,
And but Dhritarashtra basically fell in love with that boy, with his first son, and he
yes,
continued to disregard his. And if you go through the epic, and there's like 100,000 shlokas, so a lot of them are basically he and Sanjay talking, 28,000 shlokas, again
correct,
and again. They basically Dhritarashtra is telling his heart's mind to heart's whole heart's content. He's talking to Sanjay, and that's where a
Sanjay.
lot of he says, "I made a mistake here. I made a mistake there. I made this."
But
But
then
that's
it's
what
too late.
then it's too late.
So we can sum up this myth by saying that Draupadi was not at all present when this incident occurred of
Or is it
Duryodhana
responsible for
falling
Dyut
into the
or
lake.
any other? Yeah,
Yeah,
or
so she
no,
has
neither
no
was
role to play in this.
exactly.
So coming to the next myth,
No, I'll tell you
which
actually
is
another
about,
thing. Yeah,
yeah,
in Ghosh Yatra, before we start, in Ghosh
okay,
Yatra, there's this term where basically when after they rescue the Kauravas from the Gandharvas, Draupadi
yes,
says, "You are the same family. You have the same elders advising you, Bhisham, Krip. You have the same Guru, Drona, and you have the same and you have same upbringing. There's no difference. How come one side is like this? How come one side is like this?" And Duryodhan says, "Jananti dharmacha, jananti adharmacha." I know what is dharma. I know what is adharma. I am just bound by my habits. I do not have any control of my habits. That's the only time Duryodhan, before he decided to commit suicide, that's the only time
yes,
Duryodhan is crystal as a human being realizing what he has done in the past. And that's the only one moment where the real Duryodhan comes out, and then he goes back into that shell.
yes. So
And that's it.
coming back to this, Yudhishthira agreeing to the dice game because he was an expert gambler. So there is again a myth that Yudhishthira was addict to gambling, and he was an expert, which is why he readily agreed to play the game of dice. but what is the actual reality?
So actually, first of all, he was so first of all the whole sequence of events, right?
Yes,
Already Vyas. Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning. Vyas actually had a mandate from Vyas is an avatar of Vishnu. He has a mandate from Parmeshti, Brahma himself, that you know what, there is a lot of Bhumi Bhar Haran project. This is
yes,
basically Bhumi ka bhar kam karna hai, because the Rajanya Varg is basically being
burden
intolerable
on
on the earth. Earth means the people,
yes,
all the people of the earth. So
the living
he
beings.
has to create a situation where he has to create this war. So okay, Vyas is of that opinion. He wants to do that war, but he also wants to give chances for the people to wiggle out of it. So he's asking, he comes to the Yudhishthir and he tells Yudhishthir. So in a way, he's boxing Yudhishthir into that corner there. He says there's going to be a huge war, huge catastrophic war. He basically tells it's going to be most disastrous war of all time. So Yudhishthir takes an oath that I will do nothing to try to start that war. I will agree to everything possible. And so when he was asked, okay, first of all, the kings have to go for gambling. If somebody
Yes,
asked them for a dream
Kshatriya
match,
Dharma.
it was a Kshatriya Dharma about it. Another aspect of Kshatriya Dharma is that you protect the family. You do not shed the blood of family. This is a very cross cultural thing. It's not only in our culture. It is right across through into Greek, Roman, Norse culture also. You do not shed the blood of family. It's a common, it's some basic theme of life, right? Your family is the closest to you. There is things you cannot choose, right? You can choose your friends, you can choose who you love. One thing you cannot choose is your family, and so you have to work with that what you have been given, and you cannot shed the blood of family. Krishna could kill his uncle Kans because he had killed Krishna's brothers.
Yes,
Krishna could kill Pandrak Vasudev, his brother, because Pandrak Vasudev was adopted by his nana. He was no longer of Krishna's school. He could kill Shrigal Vasudev. So I'm talking from Harivansh, which is the appendix to Mahabharata. So,
Mahabharata.
and Shrigal Vasudev, because Shrigal Vasudev again is son of Vasudev, but he cannot. He is not. He is adopted by uh, his his nana, his father, grandfather. Same thing for the people like Eklavya. Eklavya is first cousin to Krishna, but was adopted by Hiranyadhanush. So basically, Hiranyadhanu. So basically, we are here. We are where Krishna himself is not crossing the boundary of killing his kin, direct kin. He kills Shishupal only after giving him 100 chances. He kills Shishupal only after telling of the crimes of Shishupal in front of all the
The
all the
audience.
assembled kings, including rape of Babru's wife and the Karush, his own cousin Karush, king's wife, right? So Krishna basically sets the case there. He is telling you this guy has done these things. I cannot kill him till now. Now I have presented my case, and then he kills him. So this is where a very important point is given. In Mahabharata, we don't see Krishna kill any of his kin unless there is a caveat around it. So Yudhishthir cannot allow Bhim, कि हाँ बेटा Bhim, ja, Arjun, ja, these guys are too much of a problem, kill them.
Mm.
No, he can't do that. He cannot. He has to abide with the Kshatriya Dharma, and that what boxes him in these corners. He says Dharma is suksham, but I have to follow it, and this is where there's another very important point. Basically, Vyas is putting us in here. Yudhishthir is in such a bad corner, but if you think about it, let's go to Purans. Vyas writes Purans, Vyas wrote Mahabharata. If he is not anything, he is consistent, right? So
That's right.
there is this great description in Purans about the Samudra Manthan, where they acquire the Amrit from.
Amrit.
So they are demons on one side, well, Asuras and Suras on other side. They both fight for it. Some of the Asuras drink the Amrit, some of the Suras drink the Amrit. But who do you think outlives all of them? Bali is going to be the next Indra. Indra changes, Agni
Yes.
changes, 125 Agnis are there, 85 plus Indras are there. Everybody changes. So who was the immortal person from that? that was Shambhu, Shiv Shankar.
Yes.
He drank the poison. So he drank the poison. Here, Yudhishthir has to drink the poison of the earth.
Yes.
And that's what Vyas again emphasizes, how a person has to basically drink the worst thing he can do and then reform himself. And that's where basically I was thinking we should get Simantani later to, in another episode and
That's right.
extrapolate about it. So Yudhishthir was not at all expert gambler. He had to do it only because he was forced to do it by Vyas and by Kshatriya. That was the first part. Yeah. And even Shakuni says, Konte loves dice, but he has no knowledge. And he challenges him. And
So he takes advantage.
he takes advantage. Now, there's another part of it. See, in Mahabharata, we have the main story, but we have 509 upakhyans, the stories within stories. And one of the biggest stories, and Yudhishthira, as he told, dishonest gambling is evil. That he basically is there. There's no Kshatriya Vela, and that he basically is talking about it. But once challenged, I cannot withdraw because he has now left it on Deva. See, that point he has left it on that, and he knows that he has to drink that poison. And this is again where Vyas comes in. Like as I said, Vyas is very consistent. He has an upakhyan about it called Nalopakhyan, which is one of the greatest pieces of poetry there is in Indian literature. In Nalopakhyan, the story of Nal and Damayanti, Nal is challenged by his cousin Pushkar to basically to gamble, and Nal loses everything. Pushkar doesn't cross the line which Dushasan and Karna and Duryodhan did. They broke that maryada, they broke the kinship threads. Now they can be killed. And of course, people will ask, why did he go for a second one? He gave them a second chance of redemption. He gave them 13 years to redeem. And you would, if you read Mahabharata and One Parv and Ghosh Yatra, Shakuni did redeem himself. You see, he gave chances to everybody. And that is where the point is. Everybody has to find their own redemption. He gave them chance and time to find their redemption. Duryodhan almost did, as we talked about it, right? Jananti dharmacha janata. He basically realizes that also for that small one moment. But then he
But
again
he doesn't take it to the logical conclusion.
exactly. And so this is why Dyut is so important part of it. And in Nal also, Nal's story also. So when Nal is in exile, there's another point basically which Vyas brings out very much. Nal has little children he leaves behind. Yudhishthira and
Yes.
Draupadi and Pandavas leave their children behind also. But at the end of the Nalopakhyan, the children they immediately Indrasen and Indrasena. Indrasena herself is the previous birth of Draupadi, right? So they themselves they love their parents regardless of whatever situation that their parents are abandoned them, nothing like that. And that's the same thing. The Uppandavas, the sons of Pandavas, Abhimanyu, Ghatotkacha, all of them come out and they fight with valor for their parents because their family is very important. Again, that is shown, and that important family bond is what Duryodhan and Dushasan and Karn broke by that incident at the Duyut. And again, so when Nal is in when Nal is there hiding his Bahuk, the charioteer. Again, a king Nal is himself a charioteer, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. Something it is a proud rank to hold. And he was to the so sage Bredashva is telling the story of King Rituparn of
Ritu.
Ayodhya,
Yes.
Ram's ancestor, cousin or something, actually, because Nal's grandson is actually married to Kush's daughter from the
Okay.
Nag Kanya. So we find that in the epics, the extended version of epic Dakshinatya. So anyway, so Nal basically there's a place when they're running away, and Nal Ritupan says, "Oh, number of leaves fallen below a tree are that many." He immediately gives you the count. So here, Vyas is not only capturing stories; he is telling us of great scientific and mathematical achievements of Indians. The combinatorial theory and probability theory are described here. So sage Bridashva tells that story to Yudhishthir and then teaches the art of gambling to Yudhishthir. So Yudhishthir is an expert gambler. but much later in one parva.
Yes.
And this has actually a roll on story. So this is where the
Very
part is,
important role.
yeah, there's a, when Bhisham is down and Drona is created the king, is
Yes.
created general, main general, Duryodhan says, I have one boon to ask you. He says, do not kill Yudhishthir, but capture him and bring him. And
Let's play
Dhiro is
dice.
very, very happy. Oh my God, my student is Ajat Shatru. Even his biggest enemy doesn't want him to be killed. So Duryodhan says, nothing like this, brother. The problem is, if we continue to fight, if Yudhishthir gets killed, Bhim is in charge.
Yes.
The worst situation would be everybody will die. And everybody will die, but Krishna will be alive. Then he will use Kunti or Draupadi and make them the queen, and then we have lost everything. So, and again, this is a lot of stuff we are basically, Rajagopalachari actually emphasizes this point. There was be woman rule is allowed. Woman can rule. And Duryodhan is worried about that part also. And that's one of the reasons why they targeted Draupadi Adut also, because she was the brain behind the Pandavas. They were
Actually, they also make a plan that let us capture Yudhishthira and get him to play a game of dice.
game, but now we are thinking
Yeah,
Yudhishthira is an expert.
but
So
they did not know this.
yeah, if and Yudhishthira would know this immediately, right? Because he has
No,
spied.
I mean Duryodhana would not know this.
Duryodhana would not know this, but
So if it had happened, then the course of events would have
no,
changed.
no. But then why didn't Yudhishthira would have just gone on the first day, 11th day? In the first day he went all the way to Bhisham and asked, "Can you give me
Yes.
victory?" He would have gone all the way to Drona and says, "Hey, arrest me. Let's play this game because I know I can't lose." But you see,
Yes.
Yudhishthira knows that's going to be a deceit because he can't lose. He can't do anything adharm either way. That's the the power as well as the constriction adharm puts on you. You have to follow dharma to its ultimate conclusion. Whatever way you travel, you have to travel it within that boundaries. So he knows he is undefeatable. He cannot play. And the second part, which is another important point, is Duryodhan is not promising a fair Dyut even now.
That's right.
And you would say, oh, but Shakuni is no longer. You see, in Ghosh Yatra, Shakuni also leaves that camp. He's not going to be playing that game, which Duryodhan is banking so much on. But he has other people. Then they mention his three of his brothers, including Vivishanti, I think Chitasen, Vivishanti, and another one, Purumitra or somebody, Purumitra. So basically, they are also expert gamblers. So Duryodhan is banking on that, and in a way that thing is the one which derives all of Drona's decisions. So that Dyut is still there, affecting now the chorus side. Ki Drona basically is the whole thing. The Sanshaktas say take a oath to take Arjun away so that Drona can capture Yudhishthir. And Pandavas fight. Chakravyuh was created for it, and actually Deepak has written a very good book on the conqueror of Chakravyuh, Abhimanyu. So you should read that to our dear listeners. And that's it. Chakravyuh was created for the same thing, and so everything which Drona did was driven from the very beginning. In a way, Duryodhan is a very bad leader also. So then you should also look at, you should give MBA. We should give MBA classes also, that you should tie the hands of your generals, right?
Yes.
You are micromanaging. So that's basically uh, the uh, the whole aspect of it. So this is a big misconception that Yudhishthir thought that he was an expert gambler and he can do it. A lot of people have done a little retelling that he thought, oh, Bhim killed Baka and Arjun conquered the north and Bhim killed Jarasandh. I haven't done anything. So, okay, I can play dice and win. No, Yudhishthir had no conception like that as he went into it. He was not an expert gambler. He went into it to prevent a future war, which he could not.
So we can sum up this particular myth as saying that Yudhishthira, at the time of the Dyuta Sabha, was not an expert in gambling, and he was under compulsion to play for two reasons. One is Vyasa's advice, and the second is to uphold Kshatriya Dharma, for which he
Yeah,
is
and
criticized a lot.
yes, and that's what I said. He drank that poison.
Yes, he
He
drank the
drank that
poison, like
kalku.
you
But the
rightly
thing
said.
is, at the end of it, end of the epic, the same way as Shiva is there going to be at the end of everything, right? before the,
Yes.
what we are in Shvetwaraha Kalp, 51st year of the current Brahma, right? So that cycle will continue again, but Shiva will always be there. And at the end of it, Yudhishthira is the one who, in his mortal coils, go into the heaven
Yes,
and
that's
is basically as an immortal, right? From drinking
so.
that Kalkut of Dut. Yeah.
So that is the excerpt displayed on the screen from the Aranyaka Parva. So wherein the sage Brihadashva narrates the story of Nala and Damayanti, and then he teaches the art of gambling to Yudhishthira, and that helps him during the 13th year of
13th year.
exile.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he goes as
Exactly.
Kanaka, and he has to prove himself as an expert in gambling with King Virata, and he does that thanks to King Brihadashva.
Yeah.
So with that, we come to the end of the second episode, but we'll be back with more episodes in the future. And before we leave, we have a guest joining us. Our guest is Bharati. She is one of the authors of Unsung Valor, the novel in which Pranshu and I have contributed. So Bharti has written a story on Airavan, the son of Arjuna and UP. And right now, she has written a story on Subhadra, which is going to be published in an anthology by Indic. Now, actually, there are a couple of anthologies which are coming up. Pranshu has written a story. Even I have contributed a story. Bharti has written a story on Subhadra. So I would request her to share her inputs about Subhadra, uh, particularly with respect to the Subhadra Haran episode. Over to Bharti.
Yeah, thank you, Deepak and Pranshu, for having me. So, one of the myths, maybe not a very popular myth, but one of the myths about the Mahabharata is about how Subhadra was abducted. So, we all know that Arjuna sees Subhadra at Mount Raivataka at the festival of the Vishnithanandakas. Krishna is also there with him, and he sees Arjuna is smitten with his sister, and he broaches the subject of marriage. Arjuna, of course, wishes to marry her, and he gets Krishna's permission, and he also gets advice. And Krishna gives the suggestion that he should opt for the abduction method of marriage. Now, this part has led to a lot of misunderstanding about the marriage not taking Subhadra's consent into account and all that. But if we go by the Bori edition, which is what you people have been following, as you should, because that is the most authentic version we have, and if we see the sequence of events, we can clearly see that Subhadra was quite evidently happy to be married to Arjuna. And the more important point is that she had plenty of opportunity before the abduction to reject it, then during it, and then also after the marriage. So she didn't do anything of the sort. So and she sported happily with Arjuna. This is what it says. So what happens after Krishna suggests that Arjuna should abduct his sister? First, Arjuna sends word to Yudhishthira and gets his permission. Then, when Subhadra goes to the Raivataka mountain to do her puja, Arjuna comes there on a chariot that's yoked to Krishna's horses, which means that Krishna is involved all through with this plan. Later, Balrama declares that we will do whatever Krishna desires. So we know that Krishna is in a position of authority to give permission for Subhadra's marriage on behalf of the family. Now, okay, that's fine. The most important thing here is Subhadra's wish. Is Subhadra happy or not? That is of paramount importance to us. Forget Krishna and Arjuna. So what is Subhadra doing? Is she scared? Is she angry? Is she frustrated? What? So we see that Arjuna abducts her. He takes her onto his chariot, and he's rushing away. And Subhadra is described here as the sweet smiling bride. So she's neither calling the guards there who are with her, who actually take the message back that so Arjuna has taken Subhadra away. She has guards there. She could have called them for help. She's not seen protesting. She smilingly goes with Arjuna. So obviously she's not very distressed. She's obviously not very angry or she's not rejecting him. Now at Dwarka, after the initial outrage about all of this, Balrama and the others also listen to Krishna, and then they approach Arjuna and Subhadra. So here, Subhadra has the option here also to make her displeasure clear. Her whole family is there surrounding them. Arjuna is alone. She can tell Balrama at any time that no, this guy kidnapped me and took me off without my consent. I don't want to marry. She doesn't do that. She's
So there
very
was no
happy to.
compulsion at all.
There's no compulsion at all. They're surrounded by Vishnus and Andakas, and Arjuna is along. The two are welcomed back to Dwaraka with pomp and splendor and all, and they are married there. So she can stop the marriage at that point and say, no, no, I don't want to get married to this guy. She again has the opportunity, she doesn't. They live at Pushkara for a whole year happily. During any time during that year, she can say that no, no, I've changed my mind. I don't want to get married to this guy. And she has her people close by. She does nothing of the sort. She's very happy with them. The point is that Subhadra, yes, Subhadra is abducted. There's no question about that. But what is her viewpoint about the abduction? That is what we have to see. When we are talking, we can't make decisions on behalf of Subhadra and say, no, no, she didn't like the marriage. We have to see what she did, how she reacted. Let's not forget, Subhadra is not a pushover. She is a very confident, very capable lady actually. She brought up Abhimanyu on her own for the most part because the Pandavas were in exile. So she's such a confident woman that when they get after the marriage, after the 1 year at Pushkara, when they return to Indraprastha, and Draupadi is very upset with Arjuna, Subhadra has the confidence to shed her royal garment and all and go directly and approach Draupadi and say, look, I'm not in competition to be queen at all. Let's be friends. That's the confidence she has. That's the kind of grace she comes with. That's the kind of judgment of people she has. She's not a pushover or a child to be just, taken away and kidnapped and she'll fall in with Arjuna's views. It's not like that at all. She's capable of thinking on her own. Now, how is Subhadra treated by Arjuna and the Pandavas later? This we come to know at the end of the Mahabharata. She and Draupadi share a beautiful bond. Draupadi, in fact, thanks her for being a mother to her children during their exile. And remember that it is Subhadra's grandson who is entrusted with Hastinapur at the end. Subhadra stays behind to take on that immense responsibility of mentoring and guiding the Emperor Parikshit. In fact, Yudhishthira verbally entrusts the kingdom as well as Parikshit and also Vajra to Subhadra.
Yeah.
That shows how much they rely on her and how much they trust her. She's not like this somebody who is not at all deemed important. It's absolutely not like that. She takes on the most important role, which Satyavati had done at one point. This is the role that she takes up. So one interesting point that Deepak had pointed out earlier is that the chapter that is following Subhadra Harana is called Harana Harika Parva. Harana meaning gift and Harika meaning giving. So gift giving was the chapter following the Subhadra chapter. So we keep picking out these single words. Subhadra Harana. So she was abducted by force and she was not given chance and she was not. It was all against her consent. That's not how we look at the epic at all. You can't take things out of context, look at just one word and then spin a whole story. That's how myths are made. That's not how the epic is written. So this is from the Bori, the southern recension, which is also a very valuable resource that has a very beautiful twist in the tale. So in this, Subhadra is already in love with Arjuna. She's been in love with Arjuna for years. She's heard about him a lot about him from Krishna and from Gada also, who's her cousin.
Yes, oh, yeah.
Arjuna comes there in the guise of an ascetic at the end of his exile, and Subhadra is asked to take care of the needs of this guest by none other than Balarama himself. And Subhadra is a very smart lady. She's a very astute lady. And while she's making sure that the ascetic has all the needs that he has all his needs fulfilled, she realizes that this guy is not an ascetic. His body is not built like an ascetic
Yeah.
or a sannyasi. He's a warrior.
Yeah.
He's
The,
got
the bow marks. The bow marks. Yeah.
and he's an archer. He's not, and she begins to suspect that this is Arjuna. She very subtly, very diplomatically, she questions him about Kunti and Pandava. She doesn't directly ask him. Very subtly, she asks him about have you met Kunti? Have you seen the Pandavas? How is Dhananjaya? Has his exile finished and all that? Arjuna realizes she knows something. He doesn't want to hide anything from her, and he immediately tells her that I am Arjuna, and I am in love with you, and I wish to marry you. Subhadra is equally smitten with him, and she is very thrilled at the prospect. Now, everybody comes to know about this. Everybody, in the sense, everybody knows it's Arjuna and Subhadra and they want to marry. Everybody includes Vasudeva knows, Rohini knows, Devaki knows, Rukmini knows, Satyabhama knows, Krishna, of course, knows, Satiki knows, Ugrasena knows. Everybody literally except Balrama and Uddhava know. They don't want Balrama and Uddhava to know because Balrama has a certain fondness for Duryodhana and they think he might object to this alliance. So they are it is the family that plans to send Balarama away and have the wedding done. Neither Arjuna nor Subhadra have a lot to do with how the wedding gets done in the southern reception. So the wedding takes place with celestial in guests also, including Indra and Indrani. And then after the wedding, Arjuna and Subhadra decide to leave for her Indraprastha. It is Subhadra who brings Krishna's chariot. She is the charioteer who is driving Arjuna away. So in the southern recension, it's actually Arjuna Harana by Subhadra. But both the bride and the groom are perfectly happy to be married. Nobody is actually being kidnapped by the other. They are both very much complicit in it. So the point is that when we just pick out one word, in this case, it was the Harana. It was the word Harana that was picked out, and the whole new story was feminist kind of angle was added to it. Subhadra never got a choice. Subhadra had plenty of chances to say, no, get lost, I will not marry you. That is the whole point. When we look at it, when we look at
She's Krishna's
Subhadra's
sister.
views,
Yeah, she's
yeah,
Yes.
Balaram's
why would
sister.
she not? Why would
And
she
the
not talk
princess,
to her
and the princess of
family?
Dwarka.
Yeah, and she's a
She
woman
was
who's
raised a
been
princess.
hated.
She wasn't raised in Gokul or anything like that.
Yeah,
She was raised as a princess from the beginning.
and this
She
woman
has,
can run an empire on her own at the end.
and
She's
she
not
did.
this
Yes.
kind to just sit around and say, okay, mere saath aise ho gaya, it's okay, I will just put up with my lot and try. No, it's not like that at all. She's not the kind to do that. That's what we need to understand when we're talking about a character. The character's whole persona has to be seen. You can't just take one incident or one word and then say, "Arey, no, no, Bechari Subhadra." Subhadra would be the last one to be wanted to be,
Bichari.
to want to be known as Bechari. That is, I think, that's what I wanted to say about Subhadra.
And even if you look at the Indonesian version, the Wayang and the Bali edition also, the marriage of Arjun and Subhadra is a very seminal event. Like they celebrate it with a huge pomp. There's a huge description of that marriage. They bring in the best dancers from across the world. They bring in, Hanuman goes and fetches that special, like, sort of a pillar, and
Okay.
they find the best dancer, the best. He's one of the dancers who was. I mean, he was one of the monkeys who had fought, not monkeys, I would say, but Vanars who had fought with Ram, and he was a great dancer. So Hanuman and Bhim convince him. So there's a whole slew of, like, like there's around 10 chapters, 12 chapters of them preparing for this great marriage.
It's
And
a
so
festival.
this
Yeah.
festival, and this is, and so the poets for thousands of years have been dedicating lot of time and attempt in even the
Correct.
retellings of this. So this literally cannot be a poor
Ah,
bichari, who was
it can.
against her own wishes taken.
Absolutely not. Yes.
So I think we have conclusively dispelled this myth that Subhadra had not given her
Hopefully.
consent. Hopefully, in fact, there's another very amusing story that Subhadra was actually in love with Duryodhana, and that is
Yeah,
why
yeah.
she did not want. So that is really, there's absolutely no basis for this.
No, even poor,
So I don't
poor
know how.
Duryodhana's own wife was not in love with him and she rejected him and Karna abducted her. So this is like going too far to say somebody
not,
random
not,
person
not
was.
only that, it goes even further in Vayang that Duryodhana's wives actually leave him for Arjuna.
Oh, okay.
So, and like she basically acts as the sort of the 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 spy inside the camp. So
Okay.
she's the one who tells Kurukshetra is going to happen. But both Arjun and Bhim and Satyaki are driven away from the battlefield on the 13th day on Chagravyu. So so in Indonesian retelling, she's there, like, and Ashwatthama suspects her from the beginning. So there's
A
all,
double agent. Yeah.
yeah, Ashwatthama and Bhanumati have this huge series of fights.
Oh,
So
Very
it's
interesting.
this is where the retellings and the other versions come up, because they try to give more space to other characters, try to make it more human, try to make it more engrossing. In that, making some of these engrossing, these retellings, some of them basically cross a point where they start actually,
yes, yes.
like, for example, like Subhadra does not want to get married. So
Yeah.
a lot of these myth misconceptions arise from the retellings, but
Yeah,
in
they do.
but extending them beyond, breaking the boundaries of the Natya Shastra, or the Mahabharata Shastra put by Vyas and Vaishampayan in place.
So hopefully our effort will go some way in dispelling these
Dispelling these
misconceptions,
myths.
Yes. This is a
and people will
fantastic
begin to
effort to
understand that
yes.
Yeah, especially that
these myths are
Andhegi,
actually not true. Yeah,
yeah,
Ande
especially
Kaputra.
Andhegi, And the
Yes.
very fact that if somebody is going to take revenge on a woman for her words itself is such a
Correct.
shallow statement. Like I
That's
would
right.
say that we really didn't need to discuss that myth even more, except that if somebody says you something and you basically are going to ruin somebody else's life because of that, that itself shows what a shallow person you are.
Correct.
And so that enough, it should be enough to dispel that myth that Draupadi ever
Yes.
even said those words in the first place. And that actually tells you how intelligent in a way Duryodhan was in
Yes.
knowing
The
how to
wrong ways.
manipulate his father. This is where they say that how the raw intelligence applied incorrectly
Correct.
basically
Correct.
leads to his own ruin, right?
Which is what happened.
Which
This
is
is
what
what
happened.
happened. Right.
So, Bharti thank you so much for joining us. It was very nice of
Thank
you to
you.
come and share your view on Subhadra. I'm sure our viewers will be waiting for the anthology
Oh,
from Indic Women of Substance. So, wherein
Yes,
Bharti
anthology
has
which has
written.
Deepak's story also as well as mine.
Yeah.
So yes, I would love for people to read and tell us what it's like.
Yeah, so we will have more such guests in coming episodes wherein they will talk about the characters they have written and the books they have written. So thank you all for joining in. Thank you so much, Pranshu, for sharing your encyclopedic knowledge about the
thank you.
Mahabharata. So people are definitely enjoying these insights into different versions of the Mahabharata and your exposition. So thank you very much, and we hope to be
Thank you.
back again next week. Thank you.
Next
Namaste.
week.
Thanks.
Thank you.